Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing great from wherever you're watching. Today we're stepping straight into the shadows of the Haunted Mansion again with a spooky new build inspired by one of my viewers named Beta Ray Brad. He suggested I build a replica prop of Raleigh Crump's Candleman. It's aged to perfection and just ghostly enough to feel like he's been flickering there for the last 100 years. So grab your popcorn, hop into your doom buggy, and let's go. Like every build I do, I always start with a quick thumbnail sketch of the overall design. Then I refine that sketch into a color illustration. Since this will be my first attempt at sculpting a figure using an armature, I'll have to be extra careful with the proportions. Once the wireframe has been completed, I will fasten it to a 6-inch diameter wood base. For the melting candle wax effect, I'll be using my hot melt glue gun. From there, assembling this piece should be a smooth ride, I hope. Our build begins by creating a hand-drawn wire armature that will serve as the skeletal framework for our figure. Using a thick black Sharpie marker, I sketch out all the details, creating a guide that will help keep everything on track when it's time to assemble the frame. Once I'm satisfied with the proportions, it's time to gather the materials needed to bring this Candleman to life. Here's everything I'll be using for the build. A 6-inch wooden base that was finished off-camera. Next is 2mm bendable aluminum wire, a spool of 22-gauge jewelry wire, white glue sticks, das air dry clay, and my trusty glue gun. I'll start with the armature sketch I created earlier. To shape the figure, I'll be using 3 types of pliers: end cutters, lineman's pliers, and needle nose pliers. After unspooling the wire, I cut a generous length and trim it down to size. I'll start with the left foot. Using my lineman's pliers, I carefully bend and shape the wire to match the outline of the drawing. Next, I align the wire with the drawing and bend it to follow the contours of the left leg. Now I'll trim the wire at the right arm, shaping the end to form the hand. Using the needle nose pliers, I start with the pinky and bend each finger into shape one at a time. The key is to make each bend as close to the hand as possible for a more natural look. So far, so good. No emergency finger surgery required. Now I'll cut a short length of wire to create the staff candles. Using the needle nose pliers once again, I form a small loop at the end of the wire to hold the candles in place. Now I'll cut another piece of wire that will be used to attach the torch. At this stage, most of the armature is assembled. Here I'm press-fitting the staff into the main body structure to bring all the components together. And here's what the fully assembled armature looks like compared to the original drawing. Not too bad for a first attempt. I'd call that a successful pile of bent wires. To temporarily secure the armature for sculpting, I'll measure and mark a point 3 inches from the base, then screw it into place. To secure the armature, I'll use 1 1/2-inch screw and a fender washer to fasten the right foot to the base. I'll then repeat the same process to secure the other foot to the base. And here's what Candleman's skeleton looks like, fully assembled and ready for clay. The bones are in place. Now it's time to give this guy some body. To begin adding features to the body, I'll use Das air drying clay along with a set of sculpting tools. I'll remove the clay from its airtight packaging and get it ready for use. Using the color illustration as a guide, I begin by kneading the clay until it becomes pliable. Once ready, I tear off a piece and apply it to the wire armature. I start with the left leg, shaping it to closely match the reference image. I then repeat the same process for the other leg, making sure both sides are consistent and match in form. For the remaining details, I slice a thin slab of clay and wrap it around the center wires to complete the form and refine the overall shape. Once each wire is wrapped, I begin blending everything together using a wooden sculpting tool. And here's what the finished sculpture looks like. I'll leave it to air dry overnight so I can continue working on it the next day.
1 day later.
After curing overnight, it's now ready to be sealed. I'll be using Mod Podge along with an acid brush. I'll apply a generous coat of Mod Podge, making sure to cover all surfaces so it's fully sealed and ready for spray painting. Neatness doesn't matter at this stage. The messier it gets, and the more drips I create, the better the final result will look in the long run. I also make sure to get into every nook and crevice so no surface is left unsealed. Since the hand is still exposed wire, I'll apply several coats to build up the fingers and fully seal them. And there you have it, Candleman, completely drenched in Mod Podge. I'll set it aside to dry overnight so I can move on to spray painting it the next day.
The next morning.
The next day, the Mod Podge has fully cured, encasing the dry clay in a hard shell that's ready for spray painting. To hide any imperfections when I apply the hot melt glue, I'll be using Rust-Oleum's semi-gloss white. I start by misting the figure with a light coat. Then I follow with a heavier coat of spray paint, allowing it to intentionally drip and run for texture. And here's what he looks like.
Several days later.
Now I'll measure 3 inches from the center of the wooden base and mark where I'll fasten the figure. Next, I drill 2 pilot holes using a 1/16 of an inch drill bit. To remove Candleman from the temporary base, I carefully unscrew both feet to avoid damaging the figure. At this point, I notice that Candleman has effectively glued himself to the temporary base. To remove him, I'll use this screwdriver to carefully pry him free without damaging his feet. Let's see how it goes. Once I've cleaned up his feet, I align each opening over the pilot holes in the base and insert a 1/2 inch wood screw to permanently attach him to the base. I'll tighten the screws just enough to keep the wire loops from opening, ensuring he's firmly secured in place. Then I'll repeat the same process for the other foot. And here's Candleman again, standing on his own 2 feet and ready for action. Now the fun begins, adding simulated candle wax streaks and drips using my hot glue gun and white glue sticks. I start at the left foot and work my way upward. Now I add more detail to his candle staff. Here I make sure to get solid coverage on both feet with plenty of hot glue so he stays stable and doesn't topple over from his own weight. Once I'm happy with the overall look, I'll use a heat gun to melt away any thin strands of glue that have built up across the surface during application. To create the simulated fire effect for a lit candle, I apply a small amount of hot glue to the tip of a scrap piece of wire. Once a small bead forms, I twist it around the tip and pull the glue gun away. As it begins to cool slightly, I stretch it into a thin strand and trim it to the desired length. And here are all 7 flames, ready for painting. For painting the flames, I'll be using Vallejo Carmine Red and Deep Yellow. I made a handy flame holder using push pins and a popsicle stick. I simply place each flame onto the head of a pin without puncturing myself in the process, creating an instant stand for painting. I'll start by applying a generous coat of yellow paint to each flame, making sure to cover all the nooks and crannies. Then I blend in the red at the base of each flame to finish the look. To add depth to Candleman, I'll use a watered-down black acrylic mixture in a small spray bottle. This helps bring out the texture while also adding dimension to the piece. there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that less is more. As soon as I spray on the paint mixture, I use a clean paper towel to wipe away the high spots. To attach the flames to the tips of each candle, I'll use the hot glue gun itself to gently heat both surfaces, then fuse them together for a permanent bond. I repeat this process 7 times until all the flames are attached, creating the eerie effect of lit candlelight. And there you have it, my friends, my take on the Candleman statue from the Haunted Mansion. This would look amazing with any Halloween decor, a haunted house dinner table setup, or as a spooky centerpiece for a themed room display. If you enjoyed today's build, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell, share, and comment below. If you have any ideas you'd like to see me build, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your feedback. To help support the channel, please check out my Etsy store at toyandpropmasters.etsy.com, where you'll find something for everyone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next build.